Welcome to the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. And I am your host, David Riddle. So, today's episode, we're going to go back a little bit in time and bring back a guest for a third time. That's right, you heard it, third time. Um, he was on for the initial discussion, and then I brought him back and we talked about zeroing pistols. And now we're going to talk about accuracy testing. So I'm going to talk to somebody who does it way more than I do, who has a lot more experience with it. And then we're going to compare notes. So you, the consumer, can get an understanding of how convoluted this can get at times or not. So if you would join me in welcoming back to the show, Mr. Luke Faust. How you doing, Luke?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming back on. I appreciate it. Nothing like being on 72 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to cover. The first time was dry fire systems when that was new. And then,
Mm-hmm.
accuracy and zeroing, though related, are kind of two separate topics.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, before you've gotta find something accurate enough to zero,
Yes, yes,
or you're gonna be chasing it forever.
yep. And I've had that where I'm chasing something that's not achievable, and you end up just wasting a lot of ammo and time. And sometimes it's the gun, sometimes it's the ammo. You got to kind of start those diagnostics if you're not getting an acceptable result.
Yeah, and if you don't know where to start or how to do it, that's a vicious cycle.
Yep.
All right, so I started. I guess I I've been contemplating doing this since the beginning of summer. Um, Seriously, I've thought about it in the past, but I started getting serious about it at the beginning of summer, late spring, and I've always done rifle accuracy testing, but I had never done any pistol, so I didn't know like what's the standard.
Mhm.
And as I started doing research, I'm not really finding that there is a specific standard for pistol ammunition like rifle. We can all pretty much agree whatever the case you want to do, hunting or competition or whatever, you're looking at an MOA or better, you know? But pistol, it's like, okay, you don't need an MOA because that would be, you know, very hard to measure at close ranges that pistols are shot at. But
Yeah, that's one hole
can,
at 25 yards.
yeah. So what can you shed any light on what you've seen being in this business? Um, what the acceptable standard would be?
Yeah, so for people who haven't seen or heard any of the prior episodes, I'm a quality engineer at Federal Ammunition. That means that testing ammo, inspecting ammo is literally my job. But then outside of that, I shoot a lot of USPSA, and I have my own guns and my own ammo, and I obviously want to optimize that for my use. So both personal and professional, I do a lot of testing. Um, with that, over the last 15 years of that, I've kind of developed my guidelines for what is acceptable for me and my sport. And I think that's really going to vary depending on what you're trying to do with your handgun. You know, the guys who are trying to do bullseye or Bianchi Cup or stuff like that might have a little bit different standards than I do as a USPSA shooter. But for me, putting together my gun and my ammunition combination, if I'm under, so I guess there's more 25 yards, 10 round groups, extreme spread. If I'm under 3 inches in that configuration, I am quite pleased, happy. That is great, good to go. If I'm under 4 inches, it is good. It's usable. Under 5 is like, I'll probably just keep that to training only, or maybe I need to do a little bit of diagnostics. But it's okay. And then anything above 5 is basically unusable. It's I can't even use it for training because it'll give me false negatives where it, oh, wow, how did I get that delta? I didn't call that at all. And actually it was an edge alpha that just flew off.
Right.
So yeah, that's my rule of thumb. Great at 3, okay at 4, acceptable at 5, and above 5 is a no-go.
Okay. So between 4 and 5, then that would be your training range ammunition at most. Then.
Yeah, that's the and it's kind of like all right, cool. I'll it's workable, but training range at most. Yeah. And I
Okay.
think a lot of people would be surprised how many different ammunition, like they're like, oh yeah, mine is always less than 3 inches. It's like, if you really bench rest and shoot at 25 yards with a lot of different ammo and or guns on the market, I think you'd be surprised at how big those groups get.
Yeah, I'm finding that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this is where again my rifle background affected my pistol shooting, made me really slow because I wanted, every shot to be on the A in the A zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I had at some point I had to make that mental change to where no, anywhere in that A zone is acceptable. So when I sat down and started shooting this stuff, I'm like, man, these groups are huge. And then you get back, and I use Ballistic X, so I actually get the radius of or the diameter of the group as well as the mean radius and some other data, and then I'm like, okay, these groups, I mean, aren't as bad as I thought they were. Number one, um, and I think I've noticed, and maybe I'm going to get into velocity for just a half a second here, but like with rifle, standard deviation and precision rifle, standard deviation is like critical. But I'm finding that it's not as critical either to the accuracy of a pistol round. Now, I'm not saying, a standard deviation of 100 is okay, but, a standard deviation of 20 is okay for pistol ammunition, and I'm assuming it's just because the distance we're shooting is not that far, so the effect is not as great.
Yeah. I think there's two kind of things when I look at that. And you're right, they're two separate factors. The first one is you have your inherent dispersion of the ammunition, which is that cone that's coming out, right? And people think about the cone as being just that, a cone. But what actually ends up happening is you have two factors that affect that trajectory and cone. And as the first one is just the accuracy of the bullet or the round itself, the gun, et cetera, that whole system. And that sets the cone. And then you have essentially your velocity range or standard deviation. So if you're setting the cone, then the velocity range or standard deviation stretches the cone vertically. So as you stretch out to farther distances where the velocity has had time to make a difference, you'll see almost always groups start stretching vertically. And we don't shoot those distances with handgun where we start to see that vertical stretch that you would with a rifle. I did an interesting experiment where I put paper at 25 yards and paper at 100 yards shooting 9mm. And you saw exactly that. You saw a roughly circular group at 25 yards and a very tall oval at 100.
Wow. So when you did that, was there any correlation? Like if you had a 3-inch group at 25, you could speculate, you could theorize, oh, it's 4 times the distance. It's going to be a 12-inch group at 100 yards. Or was it even greater than that?
So it depended on the ammunition.
Mm.
I'm gonna pull up my data here real quick and look at it. I did this out of a Mean Arms 11-inch PCC, and
Okay.
so I'm looking at to be honest, unless someone shows me otherwise, one of, if not the most accurate round on the planet, which is our 147 HST, the P9 HST2. That shot an inch at 25, and it shot 3.3 at 100. So
Wow.
a little under, that growth, and that's actually one of the higher groups I've seen at that round. I've seen that round do under 2 inches at 100, out of that same mean arms.
Good
Um,
Lord.
yeah, it's just not only is it ballistically, like as far as your expansion and terminal effects, a great round. It's just the most accurate, hands down. But as I'm looking at the other ones, we got our 124 American Eagle. That was 1 inch at 25, 4.4 at 100. So about, 4 times there.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
the 115 American Eagle, 1.5 to 7.5. So that one you're looking at about 5 times. And this one's about 4 times, about 3 times. So as I look at this, but then as I get into the bigger ones, the stuff that's really grouping a lot bigger, we have, yeah, that's four. Okay. So I would say looking across the board, it is about you expect it to be a 4x multiplier, and it's anywhere from 3 to 5x. So
Okay.
in family with what you'd expect.
Okay. All right. That's good. At least you could carry that theory out. Okay. If I'm shooting a 3 inch goop at 25, it should be roughly 6 inch, maybe 5 to 7, but
Yeah.
somewhere in there at
Yep.
50. Okay. That's interesting. It'd be interesting to do something like that with a 5 inch pistol barrel,
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
what, see if that really magnifies that dispersion at 100, or even if you put the target at 50, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
are you doing all of this indoors or is this outdoors?
Yeah. That was done. That particular test was done indoors.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, there's no indoor range around here with 100 yard target system. So,
Yeah. We have 200 indoors. So that's
wow,
nice.
nice. Yeah, that's very convenient. If you
Yes.
guys ever want to build one in Fredericksburg, Virginia, let me know.
All right. All right. I want more of them in Anoka, Minnesota.
I bet. I was just chatting with Tim Dundery last night because he was talking about night shoots and Sunday evening, and I was like, if you're in Minnesota, you need to have a cutoff time of when the temperature gets below 0 Fahrenheit. That should be the time you stop shooting. Well, it's indoor. I'm like, well, there's no challenge to that then.
Right? Yeah. It's I had run actually indoor matches here for a couple of years at a range that was right down the street from me, and they closed down a couple of years back. And so yeah, Tim's an incredible match director. He runs just great stages, great matches, and he was able to get hooked up with one of the local indoor ranges. And it looks like we're bringing back some more indoor matches to Minnesota this winter. So had a couple winters off. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, that's good. That's one way to just, even if it's just a 3 or 4 stage match. I mean, just to kind of keep you from getting too rusty.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, like a lot of indoor matches tend to be, you'll see there'll be 3 stages and they're all like 6 to 7 seconds each, where it's just this hose fest. Um, Tim's a really good stage designer, and I think he'll be able to make it where they don't feel like indoor stages; they feel like normal USPSA outdoor stages, that actually have some time behind them.
Gotcha. It was interesting that we've kind of gotten off, but I'll go ahead and say it anyway. There's a couple that runs a match about an hour from me, and they were doing an indoor match every Monday night at an indoor range. It was IDPA, but it was a quality match. There were 3 stages. It was quick. You were in and out in about a half hour to an hour, and that was it. So that's I'm just getting at again the fact that some of those matches are available for people in what you would consider the off season just kind of helps. It
Hmm.
kind of keeps the dry fire going too, because if like this match was every Monday night, they would do it.
Okay.
So so if you wanted to shoot like 2 of those a month, okay, cool. at least you were dry firing for a purpose,
Yeah. Yep.
and not just like, oh, I have 3 months of dry fire before the season picks up. And you're like, I don't have the mental fortitude to continue with that.
Yeah, and I guess my winter plan is I try to fly south for one match a month, and then that keeps that, like you said, that connection there where I'm always about no more than 4 to 6 weeks out from my next major.
Oh, there you go. Okay. All right. So getting back
Hmm.
to getting us back on track. I got way off track there. Is there anything you can point to that really determines whether I've tested a bunch of ammo so far, and unfortunately, it looks like I lost my latest Excel spreadsheet. So it looks like I lost about 3 ammo brands worth of data. The good thing is, uh, I keep everything. So like I've got all the paper, I've got all the targets. I literally have everything.
You just
So I can
remeasure it
recruit
all. Yeah.
everything, and I never get rid of it. That's a problem I've got. So I hoard targets. I've got to. What I need to do is digitize it all, and then I can get rid of it.
Hmm.
But my point is that um, while I've tested probably a half a dozen to 8 of them so far, I haven't analyzed it to the point of like, okay, what can I pinpoint makes a good ammunition, or what makes a consistent ammunition? Is there any one factor that is more important than anything else, other than, is there like a component that's the most important part, or I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can answer that. And in my opinion, the most, it sounds obvious, but maybe it's not. It's the bullet. The bullet is the most important factor. Um, it's not to say that everything else doesn't matter, but bullet number one, and everything else behind that. And I don't know that I could even prioritize the other ones. You have to have a propellant. Like if you want really good accuracy, you want a propellant that's relatively consistent. You want a primer that's consistent, and you want relatively consistent dimensions on your case. The case makes a much bigger factor in rifle stuff, where you're dealing with shoulder and head
Mm,
space, and
right.
radiuses on the shoulder, and so forth. With
Fire forming.
yeah,
Yeah.
with handgun, like I'm not seeing, and I've done that experiment. I've said, hey, let me take, brand new off, off one machine, the nicest brass there is, and let me take, and this like at home doing reloads, and then let me load them with the exact same bullets, exact same powder, exact same everything, and let me see what the difference is. And the answer was basically negligible. Like it's within the
Oh.
noise of the other stuff that's going on. And that's not to say like if you have a maybe my mixture, because I'm picking up most of my own brass, so it is mostly federal and CCI stuff. But if you had a more spread mixture, maybe it would have more of a negative effect. But the main thing is just bullet.
Okay. I assume Federal's making their own brass, so they're
Yeah, we make everything. You
okay.
know,
That's what I figured.
it's really cool because like it's one of the few places I think nowadays where raw materials come in the door and finished product packed and ready to go comes out the door. So
That's
really
wild.
really cool. But
On a massive
yeah,
scale, though.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Because I mean, there are like I'm chatting with a guy right now in the north side of Richmond, Virginia, um, that started an ammunition company, and they do a few types of ammunition. Oh, it's all 9 millimeter, but my point is that they might do um, they'll do a couple, but not on the scale of rifle, pistol, shotgun, everything that Federal does on a
mhm.
freaking grand scale. So, how often? are you testing ammunition for yourself, like your own personal, trying to determine what works in your guns, whether it be pistol or rifle?
Yeah, so I unfortunately have had a couple rough years here where I've had to switch platforms a couple times due to actually accuracy issues with my first switch off of
Mm,
the P3. So I was on the P320 for a couple years, and they just I couldn't get them to be acceptably accurate. You know, we talk about that threshold of like above 5 inches, and it's not usable.
right.
I was constantly breaching that threshold, and it wasn't the ammo. I could throw the ammo in a Glock and shoot acceptably, or a Walther or whatever. So just by scientific method, eliminating variables, it was the platform, and I did everything I could. Eventually moved on, but what I kind of have learned since is like that I used to just assume that the gun was always good and the ammo was always good, and it was me if there was a miss or there was something where I didn't expect it to be, I just assumed it was me at the shooter and as
Right.
the shooter. And I think as at some point during my shooting journey, my skills got to the point that it was likely, like there could my ability as a shooter is beyond the ability of the gun and the ammo combo in a lot of situations. Um, and so yeah, I started testing, and I think I go kind of through flurries to answer your original question. I'm just kind of looking right now at my data sheet, and if I'm doing some load development for some like reloading stuff, I could be shooting multiple times a day, testing different configurations and stuff. In the normal go of things, it looks like I do testing about twice a month. I shoot about 5,000 rounds a month, and I'm cleaning every couple thousand. So at minimum, I'm re-zeroing twice a month.
Oh, are you re-zeroing after each cleaning?
Yeah. So I will. Yes. The short answer is yes. Um,
Hmm.
I at least like I'll ultrasonic clean, so I'll take off my optic.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense. Wow, ultrasonic cleaning, really?
Yeah, I mean the for me, when you're shooting so much and like I'm cleaning guns constantly between my rifles, my handguns, everything. It's a pain in the ass and I hate it. Uh, so and
But it smell. I love the smell of cleaning solvent, man.
oh no, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
Uh,
So I am
it's my crack.
constantly trying to figure out quicker ways of doing this thing. And so right now I have a system with dropping in the ultrasonic. A lot of the parts that like a lot of the parts that aren't necessarily baked on are just they come out clean. I don't have to brush anything. I don't have to do anything. Stuff that gets a little hotter closer to the chamber, it'll have carbon baked on, but I can ultrasonic for a little bit, softens everything up. Go in with a copper brush it all out, drop it back in the ultrasonic for another 5-10 minutes, and then we're good to go. Just go blow air compressor, blow it all off, and go from there. I'm currently experimenting with other methods of like basically a mini pressure washer to try to like do it where I can do it with like less disassembly and just blast the whole thing out. We'll see where that goes. That's the experiment for later this weekend.
Wow. Is there any weekend that goes by that you're not experimenting with something?
No, I mean pretty much. I mean, obviously around matches like major matches, I'm less tweaking things, but as an engineer, like I can't stop. Like even if I'm training, there's only I can only train an hour or two a day before my hands are just fried. So what do I do with the rest of my day?
Right. Crunch numbers.
Yeah, yeah. So it's always kind of looking at what systems for obviously work. Work's another thing I do with my day, but outside of that, what systems can I create to make myself better, my gear better, my processes better, and then creating designing new things or new products that help me as well.
Now, I want to get back to your cleaning for a minute. As far as I'm concerned, if you're talking, and I'm not talking PRS. I'm just talking if you want a very accurate rifle. I
Hmm.
always felt that keeping it clean was critical,
Yeah.
because anything that gets in that chamber that affects the way the everything ignites, or the pressure within the chamber from round to round. I mean, there's so many things that can affect it, that I always kept my stuff clean, very clean. Pistols, again, totally different story, because again, we're not talking 1,000 yards. We're talking 25 yards, maybe 40, at a bigger match. But on average, if you're going to a local, 25, maybe 30 yards is what you're looking at max range. So I don't know if it's as critical, but when you're doing the, testing like you do, whether it's personal or professional, does it become more critical that the gun is clean?
So I am cleaning the gun for function, not accuracy. And I can dive into that in a minute. I have tested the accuracy side of things, and there's certainly the short answer is it doesn't really matter. Like you can get these things basically as dirty as you want. You're not going to really negatively affect accuracy in any meaningful way. Um, I have noticed occasional odd effects in the sense of um, if you do get a chunk of something right where it locks up, you can have like it can get wonky for a little bit, and then as that chunk of brass or that chunk of carbon works its way out, now you get you're more consistent back to steel on steel lockup, and you're good to go. So as things get dirtier, you can occasionally have it like kind of the accuracy will come off the rails for a minute and then come back in. And actually, like brand new cleaning before you've really got it fouled up at all, I've noticed it kind of can brand new cleaned gun can be open a little bit, and then it'll like kind of dial in a little bit as you put some rounds on it. So after cleaning, I will do like I'll do doubles drills for a minute or so, set it down, let it cool off for a minute, and then establish my zero.
So just to foul it up a little bit.
Yeah, just to get a couple rounds through it, to make sure that my POI settles in and my accuracy settles in. But I think honestly, those two factors, they're to a certain extent they're just noise. I wouldn't worry about them as an average shooter. I'm cleaning because so I have three guns that I'm kind of in the process of evaluating right now, or maybe a fourth soon. So I was running the tan I was running the Tanfoglios. I switched back, and then before that, well, I guess we're getting P320. Ran that for a couple years. Could not
Okay.
get the accuracy to be consistent. Went to the Shadow 2. Loved the Shadow 2 ergonomics. Had really good luck with my first four Shadow 2s that were coming out of Kansas City. Kansas City roll marks on them. Great function, great accuracy, great everything. As those aged out and I moved into their Hartford, Connecticut guns, I have had nothing but problems. Um, Inaccurate from the
Mm.
factory, like 1 in 10 failures to extract right out of the box, etc. I'm on I have four of them now. I had and CZ's working with me, but they keep sending me replacements that are still not working, which is quite frustrating. So started shooting Tanfoglios for a while. Unfortunately, I had a whole nother set of issues very similar to the CZs, and then I picked up some Glocks and I have them and I shoot them, but I hate shooting them because they don't feel like CCs and Tanfos. I love the ergonomics of them. The recoil impulse really nice too. It's mainly the ergonomics and the grip, which I got to. At some point, we should talk about the product I just released yesterday from my brand that helps fix that problem. I have one sitting over here. So it is a back strap. Where's the camera at? It's a back strap for a Glock that has the ergonomics of a Shadow 2 slash CZ75
Wow.
platform.
Really?
Yep. Just snaps right on, gives you those ergonomics where it sits real nice in your hand. So that's me trying to one of the products I'm trying to do to work through this whole thing. Those are available on Faust Systems right now. Um, got them for the 17, 19, and 26. But yeah,
And you Faust.systems?
Faust Systems. Yep, that is the website for the products that I sell. And
That's huge because I do not like the ergonomics of a Glock. I like the way they shoot. I have no issues with Glocks. I like them, but I don't like the ergonomics. So that could be literally be a game changer.
yeah, it really was for me as I kind of walked through this, and I wasn't necessarily going to plug this right here, but it came up. So,
Yeah.
I love the way the skinny back on a Shadow 2. You know how you have that beaver tail that you can just really steer. It gets into the web and you can steer it really well. I with the Glock, I felt like without that, like this big flat thing, it couldn't orient well in my it kind of slip around. I get bad index, and that
Okay.
the more narrow of the Shadow 2 allows me to kind of really get deep into that web and gives me more precision. Like it just kind of always settles into the right spot. So I started making this, this whole year has basically been massive gun issues for me.
Oh wow.
With the Shadow kind of going off the rails when I got my 2020 late 2024 set of guns. The Tanfos basically had their own set of issues, very similar though. I think the extractor design in the CZ75 is like fundamentally flawed at this point. Like it's just across too many different guns, across two different manufacturers, I have basically nothing but extraction issues. Um, so, and that's across, ammo from, us, our sister facilities, CCI, Remington, and then other ammo brands too. Like it's definitely not the ammo because I can pick up, which I did this August. I shot Glock exclusively while I was pretty heavily in the development of this product. And I shot 6,600 rounds through a Glock in the month of August with zero cleaning, zero lubing, and zero malfunctions. Uh, I can't do that with the CZs or the Tanfos. They need cleaning at least every 2,000 rounds, and to make sure they can continue functioning, and lubing at least every 1,000, and I can't get a zero malfunction month, not this whole year at least.
I'll be honest. You just gave. I've never had anxiety, but you just gave me anxiety saying that you fired 6,600 rounds without cleaning. Literally, I went into tachycardia there. So that's
Yeah,
not good.
and that was actually this block right here, and it still has not been cleaned. And before I did that in that month, this had I don't know how many thousands of rounds on it. I'm every kind of platform I like to find its limits to know where they are. So I just kind of torture test it, if you will, and shoot it until it doesn't work anymore. And I have gotten every gun to fail except Glocks, and actually the old PPQ that I had was an absolute tank. Just kept going and going and going and going.
Wow. Huh. Okay. Well, I hate torture test videos on YouTube, but that's a reasonable torture test. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm not like trying to like mag dump, get it all hot and stuff. I'm just like I'm gonna use
Right.
it in my daily life of
Yeah.
training, and I'm not gonna give it any maintenance, and we're gonna see how long it goes. And then that helps me
Yeah.
set my maintenance schedule because then I know, all
Sure.
right, this thing I pushed it to its limit and it failed at 5,000 rounds. All right, well then if I clean at 2,500, I should never run into a surprise. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
that good. Or maybe that ends up being 2,500 and I have to clean every 1,000. It helps me set all my maintenance schedules.
I agree. And that's what I'm saying. That's why I think it's very reasonable what you're doing. And it also, I don't think you can ever be too familiar with your firearms.
Hmm.
So that's just another thing about your firearm that you know in your mind. And it also, because we both know that, especially in the competition realm, confidence is key. And if you know that your gun is good to 5,000 rounds before you need to clean and you're at 2,000, you can go into a match knowing
Mm-hmm.
I will have zero mechanical issues because I need to clean it. I can worry about other stuff. If you have a dot that you feel is ironclad, now you know your dot's good, your gun's good, your ammo's good. Now you're just like, okay, the only factor left is me. I just have to make sure I'm good. Everything else is fine. I just focus on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I love those. And when I say I hate the ones on YouTube, because they throw them in mud and then they do this and then they do that and they freeze them and then they shoot them, and I'm like, man, is that really worth it? I don't know that. Maybe if you live in Alaska, you need to know how it works in very cold weather, or like in your case, Minnesota, where you're already in Arctic weather, I'm sure, um, as we're into November.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that where you may need to know some stuff, but that to me is reasonable. It'd be no different than if you're, an AR style rifle. You want to know how, because typically you can't go 5 or 6,000 rounds without cleaning those. They're definitely going to have some malfunctions. They get dirty. They don't like they don't tend to operate as well. So
Yeah,
I also,
the best I've ever seen on ARs, and I did I had a similar kind of trial to right now I'm doing the handgun thing, which reminds me, before we move on from it, I just talked with some people who are looking at KMR handguns. Have you heard of these?
I have not. No.
I'm super excited for this. So if you look it up, it's the KMR Spectra is the one I want. It's the equivalent of a Shadow 2, and it's made actually by a company in Czech as well, who I think are like loosely affiliated with CZ in some way, maybe. Um, but it's essentially a Shadow 2 with a completely different extraction system. It looks like it's kind of like maybe a P10 ish extractor, kind of sorta. Definitely more Glock esque. Um, I think I'm gonna be getting one of these in soon, hopefully, or they're getting imported soon. I am very excited for this. I hope that it works out.
I'm going to switch scenes here. And then I'm going to share my screen, because that is a very interesting, whoop, very interesting. It looks exactly like a shadow.
Yes, with the fundamental thing that's being different for me is, I guess you can't really see it. It's actually kind of funny on their website. Um, they don't show the right side of the gun where you can see the extractor, but it is a completely different extractor design, and that's really like, yeah, do that for me. Keep everything else on the gun the same. Everything else about the Shadow I'm good with, and just change out the extraction and the locking mechanism on the barrel, and give me basically the equivalent of a Glock, and I'm happy. Like this is me trying to make a Glock feel like a CZ. Now just change out the extractor and the bullshit on the Shadow that doesn't make it extract well, and now you've made a Shadow like a Glock, and eventually these two worlds will just come together.
There you go. They'll collide and meld into one. I
Yeah,
mean, that's a good looking gun too.
yeah. I could care less as long as it works. It's good looking, but I'll make it look terrible once I throw all my doodads on it.
There you go. So it looks like it's a hammer. You got a hammer there, and it looks like an oversized trigger guard too, which I like.
Yeah, it is a Shadow 2, double action, single action. I think a lot of the parts internally are compatible. The grips are Shadow 2. A lot of the stuff is all compatible CZ75 parts. It's the big thing, and you can see it in, like, there's some YouTube videos in which European guys who already have them are taking them apart, and the locking mechanism, the extractor, etc., are just different. And I hope that different means less problematic than the current designs that I'm struggling with in the Tanfos and the CZs.
Do you know if the price is going to be roughly the same as a CZ?
No, I know it's going to be a lot more, at least based, I think. based upon what I'm seeing in Europe. So once again, these aren't even in the States yet.
Right.
And in Europe, before tax, they go for like 2,900.
Okay. So we're talking 2011 prices.
Yeah. To be
Okay.
honest, at this point, like, I mean, you look at a shadow is what, like 1,200 right now ish, 11, 1,200.
Yeah.
And then a Tanfo is, for their extreme series is like 17 to 2,000, ish. So yes, is this a step up from that? Yes, but if it works, I don't care because I don't have to buy four of them and still not have one that works. You know?
Now it does look like it's got the tapered rear back here. So it does look like it's exactly what you're talking about, being
Yeah,
able to guide it a little better.
yeah, that's the same that's on the Shadow or the like. If you look
Okay.
closely at a Shadow, it's got that same thing, and so does any CZ75 platform has. And I know these numbers because I've been working on it. It's about 0.667 wide in that little like beaver tail cutout area, and then after that
Mm,
second step, it goes out to about an inch, which is the standard width of the body.
okay. Yeah, it's got like a beveled beaver tail, so it's tapered.
Yep, that
Okay.
is the standard look right there of all of them. It looks like they changed the geometry in the beaver tail just a smidge. But once again, I've never picked up a CZ75 based gun and not been like, "Yep, I like the way this feels." Whether it be the OG 75s or the Shadow ones, the Shadow twos, the Tanfos, they all feel great to me. So I don't think I'm gonna have any ergonomic concerns here. It's more just I want that. I want a different extractor.
Okay. Yeah, there's a okay. 17 round capacity. So, all right. Man, that is a I do like the look of that gun. Now, the dust cover seems is it just me or is the dust cover like really long on this thing?
I think it's just the angle they took that picture at. It's your standard
Okay.
5-inch Shadow too.
Oh, okay. All right, it's just a 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, from that angle it's like, "Whoa, that looks like really long."
Yeah.
Looks like I could mount a bipod underneath that thing.
Yeah. It's a good angle. Yeah, and it does look pretty long on that one too.
It
Um,
does.
I don't know.
Huh.
There's not too much too much info out there, but in the specs they give, it says a 5-inch barrel.
Okay. Well, let's
Unless I
back
missed
up
some.
here. No, 5-inch heavy fluted nitrided barrel. So yeah,
Yep.
you're absolutely right.
And the Shadow 2 is a 5-inch barrel. So Shadow.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's
Okay, so
interesting. I'm glad you brought that up.
the Shadow 2 is a 4.9-inch barrel, but close enough.
It's 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing. That's like one of my guns has a 4.76-inch barrel. I'm just like, it's a 4 3/4 inch barrel.
Yeah.
I'm dropping that 1/100th of an inch off. I don't care.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. That's awesome.
So I think before I got off on that tangent, you're talking about rifles, and I did a similar. Last year was my kind of year of I had a BRN 180 go down on me at PCSL Nationals in 23, I think it was, and it was either 22 or 23. And God, I didn't even know what year I did my rifle trials, but I got a ton of different rifles. I got one of the Q rifles. I got a CMMG. I got a whole host of them. And Geisley's were one of them. The SIG MCX, Geisley, etc. Anyway, the Geisley was the most the one that made it the most in a normal firing schedule and a normal training schedule. It made it to just under 2,000 rounds, no cleaning, no lubing, nothing. Um,
That's impressive
yes.
for a PCC. So,
No, that was 5.56.
oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And the Geisley, I just dumped more lube. Like I literally hadn't lubed it. Dumped some lube in there, and it just kept going. I got to like 3 or 4,000. I just kept dumping lube in. Actually, I want to say I think I breached 5,000 on that gun before I just said, all right, well, this is disgusting. I'm gonna clean it. Um, but the Geisley rifles, I'm still trying to find my date in the handgun world. Like I haven't found the girl I really like yet. But the
You're
Geisley
not
rifles,
willing to settle down yet.
I'm not willing to settle down yet. But the Geisley rifles, we've set our vows.
Oh,
We're good to go.
till death do you part.
Yes, yes, those things are amazing.
Okay. Wow. Now, uh, and part of the issue with ARs is the gas system. So is that gas or piston?
It's a gas system. It's a DI. I
Okay.
ran, I really liked the concept of a piston system, but what I found is that there's just not enough. You can't fit all the springs in the upper to have enough spring force to be able to both cycle the gun and be able to power through any kind of build up carbon
Mm,
dust. The where you really see those guns fail, and where I've seen guns fail just in general, is when I shoot out west and you get the moon dust out in Utah and Vegas, and that just locks
right.
guns up. And the piston guns struggle with that. The only one that I've seen that, from a reliability standpoint, was good to go was the MCX. The MCX powered through it pretty well. My just beef with the MCX, it was so heavy. My Geisleys are literally like 2 pounds or something lighter than my MCX is. I actually have the notes on here. Like, kitted up the way I have it configured, my Geisley's at 6.6 pounds. Optic, etc. And my MCX Virtus was at 8.8 with the same configuration, and my Spear LT was at 8.4. So a considerable amount heavier.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's 33% heavier
Yep. But
than
yeah,
the
the
other one.
Geisley, it's just a standard DI AR. A lot of stuff on its mil spec, and they really seem to be very intentional about where they decide to go away from mil spec, and they really make sure that it's going to be an improvement, and it really is. The Super Duty series, I obviously, like, I'm so particular that there's things I adjust on them, but you can take them out of the box and just run them. But I'm adjusting them with Geisley factory parts. It's like I want the charging handle that has a little bit more to grab onto, but I'm going to grab the Geisley charging handle. I want the SSP single stage trigger versus the SSAE that they ship with on the 2 stage. But all Geisley stuff, and all just bomb proof.
You're talking triggers, and before I started all this testing, I tested the trigger weight of every single one of my triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So I did 5 trigger pulls with each one with a scale, and then I took the average of the 5. And I'm finding that even with that, not every I could have a 3-pound trigger pull on one gun and a 4-pound trigger pull on another, but the 4 feels better.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty interesting. And I will say this, that having fired as many rounds as I have now with the gun rested and squeezing it like a rifle trigger, like I'm trying to put round on top of round, it's really made me notice the difference in the triggers more so than dry fire or going out and doing any type of live fire training that I would do for IDPA, USPSA, PCSL, anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
because I am really feeling every single millimeter of travel in that trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I am really finding that there is, I didn't realize in the pistols just how much of a difference there was. Even though the trigger felt great, there is still a pretty massive difference in I have a couple of guns that if I slowly pull that trigger, though nothing will move. Like, not even when the striker goes, it doesn't disturb the dot. Whereas in some of them, as soon as that striker releases, the dot moves anyway, just from the release of the striker.
Yes. And you're looking at like in that instance, it might not even be the trigger. It's more the slide to frame fit, the locking block to the barrel, like all of those things. If they're
The
depending on how
internals.
sloppy there are, with like my P320s, for example, like the whole slide could move on its own independently. So you'd have everything lined up, and then right as the striker's like breaking, the dots doing all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I mean that can be trigger related or even just mechanically in the gun.
Okay. So I want to use that. I'm finding more and more and more that I like flat face triggers. But
Okay.
I've noticed the CZs and the KMR, they all have those curved triggers, but I find that my finger will move a little bit on that trigger as it pulls back. What are your thoughts on those rounded triggers versus a flat trigger?
Yeah, so I mean, I have the Glock here, so we can take that as an example. So
Okay.
what there's two things that I want to mention here. The first thing is when people are using a trigger pull gauge, I'm gonna get really close to the camera here. So when
Sure.
you're using a trigger pull gauge, and if you just imagine my finger as one, and I press on this very bottom part of it, right? Well, that gives me the most leverage on the trigger. Whereas
Correct.
if I move it to the center of the trigger and I push, I have less leverage. Like with the awkward way of
Correct.
holding it, it's even harder. And the higher I get, it's even
It's
worse.
almost
So
impossible. Yeah.
yeah, so people need to like really be particular about where they align their trigger pull gauge in order to like. A lot of times, I will take the pre-travel out of the trigger so I get a nice flat kind of surface for
Yes.
it to, and then I'll
Yep.
hook the trigger pull gauge on, and I'll make sure that relative to like, all right, every single gun I do, I'm going to do it right at this whatever that point is, like at the top of the magazine release or whatever that is. And that also kind of that same kind of concept applies a little bit on your flat face versus your curved triggers. What I prefer curved triggers for the most part, but I'm also shooting guns that have a lot of travel. I think you get away with the flat face triggers when you don't have a whole lot of travel or over travel. And the way that I think about it is the way that your fingers on the and I think I'm gonna put this over. So as my finger gets onto a flat face trigger, you think about wanting to have like pressure evenly across the whole tip of your finger, but that's
Right.
really on a the only time that you can have that is on a straight pull trigger like a 2011. When you have a hinge system, like the pressure is going to roll across your finger no matter what you do. If you have a flat trigger, it's just you minimize the amount that the pressure shifts if you have minimum amount of overall travel. Does that make sense?
Correct. Yeah. 100%. I agree.
So with guns like a Glock that have a lot of travel, well, out here I'm do my extra double safety check here. Out here, I'm sure I'm only contacting with like the bottom part of my trigger finger feels the most pressure. As I come back to the wall, now we're about, like it's shifted up to about halfway, I'm in the middle of my trigger finger. And then as I break, the pressure shifts even higher and I feel more pressure like kind of more near the top. And if the curve allows it to minimize that, if it was a fully flat trigger with a Glock level travel, it would be a huge amount of pressure right
Oh,
now up at the top, and then a huge amount of pressure on the bottom, and it would be more severe as it shifts to the top. Um, and I don't love the way that feels. I like curve, and when you think about a Shadow 2 or any kind of double single gun that has a huge amount of travel, they need even more curve to try to flatten out that pressure shifting across the finger on a hinge system.
well, and I think most striker fired guns have that style of a trigger. That curve to me, that's a mild curve. But when you look at like Berettas and CZs and the KMR, those are much more
Yes,
severe of a curve. Those are the ones that I'm not particularly a fan of.
and that's just it's inherent to you have to curve it more because it travels more. Like if you look at this is traveling
Right.
like somewhere between a half to half inch, quarter inch, somewhere in there. I mean, it's yeah, this is probably, yeah, we'll call this like zero point 0.3, and then a shadow is like 0.6, 0.7. It's almost double. And so, in order to have it not be completely ridiculous, they have to do, as far as the shifting feeling in the finger, they have to curve more. Like try. There's some Shadow 2 triggers out there, aftermarket ones. I don't know if it's Cajun or who else makes it, that are curved, but much more like of a Glock-like curve where it's much less severe. And what you'll notice is, yeah, sure, it feels great, for your first single action pull, it feels a lot more normal or natural. But then all your, the trigger is all the way pressed to the back, and all your double action pulls, the trigger is almost at like a backward angle, and you're shooting off the top of your finger, your trigger finger. It's a really
Oh,
weird
wow.
feel. I don't like it. So
Oh,
I think
yeah.
I think that is just inherent to a double action system. The longer your pull, the more curve you need in order to have any chance of the pressure being even across the front face of your finger when you're breaking.
Well, that would make sense then. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, going back, I had written down a question or a couple of them, but in particular, um, when you're resting, what are you using to rest your pistols on when
Yep.
you're doing pistol testing?
So I have a sandbag, uh, champion, target, whatever, standard, kind of pistol rest sandbag thing. Um, I There's two things that I think are very important to make sure of. The first one is that the magazine is not touching anything out, like anything at all. Not the table, not my rest, nothing. I've noticed in some guns, especially striker fire guns that have a sloppy slide to frame fit, is I can get a bimodal group if I pressure on the magazine. So like shoot 5 rounds with no pressure on the magazine, then 5 with, and I can shift the group from like, hey, I'll have some rounds here and then some rounds, down below it, just by pressure on the magazine. So I'm very cognitive of that. I literally always have a short mag, even for my carry, as I'm traveling around with my carry optics rig, I always have a short mag in my bag for zeroing, so that it's not hitting the table. And then the other one is making sure I don't have too many obstructions super close to the muzzle. So as guys are shooting sandbags, sometimes they'll like sink into the sandbag a little too much near the muzzle, and as the gases are coming out, they're hitting the sandbag and creating turbulence, even if the bullet isn't. So I try to just make sure I have clearance around my muzzle where I'm not going to have any kind of gas deflection back at that bullet. Um, that's the two main things with and then obviously just getting as stable as possible. Gun on the bag, and then arms typically on the table where I have like 3 points of contact. Somewhere on my forearm or my elbows on each gun is on the table, and the gun's third there. And then it's just as simple as keeping a firm grip on the gun, and keeping it steady as you're working the trigger.
Okay. Very similar. Okay. Now, when you are you are you doing the majority of your testing with a dot or just iron sights?
So I used to test both ways, but the dot's just a better test platform. So if I'm evaluating guns and ammo, I'm going to test with the dot, because then I know that like I'm shooting maximally accurately. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm zeroing an irons gun, then obviously I'm gonna shoot with irons. But really, the only time I'm gonna shoot with irons is that I just need to get this irons gun zeroed. Other than that, if I want to do any kind of ammo or gun evaluation, the dot's going on.
Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm finding that when I'm testing ammunition, then I'm almost doing it more like old school irons where I'm looking at the target and the dot to make sure they're aligned as perfectly centered as possible.
Yes, I close one eye.
Okay.
Like I shoot both eyes open, obviously with a dot, but when
Right.
I'm doing like accuracy testing and bench rest, I will close one eye. I'm getting the whole system as crisp as possible. I use these little white squares that are about 2.5 inches that I come off like a label printer, and I'll use these just little white squares. And at 25 yards, the dot is like perfectly contained within that square. So there's a very clear, like visual picture that I'm looking for that, just geometrically aligns itself. And yes, crisp dot, crisp square, everything super crisp, one eye. Yeah.
I think it's amazing that even at 25 yards, when shooting with a dot, like I was shooting some ammunition and I was finding that I had printed out some targets on some card stock 8.5 by 11. So it was a good sized bull in the middle of the target. And as I was aiming in the middle, it was hitting off on the left edge of the paper
Hmm.
and off of the left edge of the paper. So I'm like, okay, I was able to aim at the right edge of the paper and literally be able to split the dot with the edge of the paper and keep the quote unquote wobble area basically, within half of that dot right on the edge of the paper and centered because I could still see the numbers
Yep.
through the bullseye. So I was still able to precisely aim where I want because it was a dot. I don't know how well I might have been able to still do that with irons, but it's definitely more tricky.
Yep. Yeah, the
So,
dots are great. As long as you have a consistent dot that doesn't walk around on you, good to go.
right. Agree. For somebody that shoots maybe mostly locals and a, a maybe a level 2, so like a state
Yeah.
match or something like that, on the occasion, maybe 3 or 4 of those a year. What recommendation do you make for them so that they know that their ammunition isn't going to be a weak link at one of those matches?
So, and I would say this for everyone, like, regardless of skill level, the stages we shoot are the same. Whether you are the national champion contender or a D class shooter, you're shooting the same stage. The targets are at the same distance with the same requirements. So it's the same thing that I tell everybody. And actually, a local shooter, Ben Eagleston, he's a really really good carry optics shooter. Um, he was training with me and Darrison Thin, one of my coworkers at Federal, one day up at Forest Lake, and I forget exactly what triggered this, but he was like, yeah, I kind of need to zero my gun. It doesn't really feel right or whatever, and or maybe we were zeroing, and we started shooting his gun, and we were getting kind of unacceptable groups at like 6 inches, maybe 6 7 inches out of his match ammo, match gun, everything, and it made him like, oh shoot, I got to do some diagnostics here. Even he's a top level guy. Had really never sat down and bench rested like we do. Like the process we just described, and
Right.
him like forcing himself to do that once and kind of learn that process. He was like, wow, this is not good. Like these Darrison's Glock is doing way better with the same ammo. When we started diagnostic, and it turns out his barrel was just shot out. He had gotten I think the gun used from Timmy, and it was beyond serviceable life. He ended up either getting a new barrel or getting a new gun or whatever, and now with that same ammo, he's shooting less than 3 inch groups, or whatever that is. So that's it. And I tell that story to say, no matter who you are at what level, this process that we're discussing, get a sandbag, get stable, shoot some groups at 25 yards, and either, hey, hopefully, I hope you guys see what you like. You're like, hey, I'm shooting, less than 3 inches, great. Less than 4 inches, good. And then, if it's more than that, less than 5, okay, good enough, depending on, maybe that's the kind of the borderline area where a guy who's not as serious or committed might be like, you know what, that's good enough for me still. I know that's not holding me back. Or you have something happen like what happened with Ben, where it's like, oh, this is not
This
okay.
is bad.
I got to do something
Yeah.
about this. Like, and if that's the case, then scientific method, process of elimination. All right, if I take this ammo and I shoot it in a different gun, how does it shoot? If it shoots good, then it's not necessarily, it doesn't mean it's your gun, but it means it could be your gun, and try different ammos out of the same gun. Sometimes there's a component that's just bad, being the gun or the ammo is just, it's bad. It doesn't work in anything. And sometimes you have just compatibility things where you take this gun that works well with most ammo types and this ammo that works well with most guns, and you put them together. And even though they're both good, they just don't mesh well together. So you kind of got to just use the scientific method, control your variables, and figure out what your problem is. But like I said, I hope for most people that they just won't have any problems, and they'll find out what their capability of their system is. But that also goes to, speaking back to Ben's situation, you could have a perfectly capable system. You get all set up, everything's looking great, and 3 years later, it's not, and it's opened up. Something's worn out, something's gone awry. And if you don't, occasionally baseline where your system's at, you won't be able to know what good or bad is, or be able to react when it does go wrong.
And I think that's the key part there it's not a once in a lifetime thing, where you determine a baseline at the beginning and then that's it. I mean, you've got to, depending on how many rounds you shoot, if you're a casual shooter who's only shooting a couple thousand rounds a year, well, you could probably, every year, every other year, whatever it is, you need to baseline it for sure. You need to
Yep.
check your zero, but then you also need to occasionally do a more in-depth testing of your gun. But for someone like Ben or yourself that shoots thousands of rounds every year, probably need to do a little bit more frequently so you know that the gun is still zeroed, the gun is still holding groups and all of that, because you never know where that threshold is going to be.
Yep, absolutely. Before every single major, like if you really care about it, and you're going to a major match. Even if it's not time to clean, and it's got, it's dirty, but it's not too dirty. Sit down, and before you fly out, bench rest, or drive out or whatever, bench rest a 10 round group or two, and make sure that it's hitting where you want it to hit. The difference in I forget exactly the situation, but I remember telling somebody about it. Like, the difference in a precise zero, let's say over the course of a match, is if you were like an inch off on your zero and you had 20 shots that were within an edge of the alpha line, and you lost half of those, so you ate 10 more Charlies just because you didn't zero your gun. Like, how bad do you want it? Do you want to be successful? Do you want to win or not? Because you gave up 10 Charlies out of laziness. And
Right.
that's the way I look at it. Like, I get, you can tell I get pretty passionate about that. It's like
Yeah.
there is stuff that happens on the clock that you have no control over. Like, that is what it is. Like, but before I step up for those 10 to 20 seconds that really matter, I have no time limit on preparing my gear and my gun to make sure that I am optimally set up to be successful in that environment. And having as perfect a zero as I can potentially get is one of the things that supports that.
I think too, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier when you were talking about your torture test and how far you can push these guns. And I said, well, it's also getting to know your gun.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you know about it, the better you are, or you'll be, because if you know your gun well and you're shooting and you're like, man, I'm getting some weird, random, you know, changes here, then that would also be a clue to test your gun. If it's not shooting where you think it should be shooting, then there's an issue and you need to sit down and diagnose what the problem is. Because
Mm-hmm.
chances are it's not you. There's going to be something else in the component here that is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to know that. No, number one, you have to know that about yourself, and number two, you have to know that about your equipment. So now, I was going to ask you earlier when you had your Glock up, what red dot are you using there? It's an enclosed dot.
Yeah, so just like I am married to Geisley for life, I think, I mean, I don't know, we'll see, but I love these 509Ts. So this is a Holosun 509T. As you can see, there's still factory irons on here. You just get, this is direct milled. They cut, it's
Mm.
basically like I don't have the tools to take this off right now, but it's like a mini Picatinny rail right on the top of the slide. And
Oh
so
wow.
this mounting system in particular, I love because you send it out to get machined. This one got machined by, I think it was Wager. They quick turnaround, a week or two maybe, and you get your slide back, and it's just got a little Picatinny rail that's cut in it in front of your rear sight channel, and
Hmm.
then you can, without adjusting the irons at all or whatever, you can just take this on and off. And if you picture the mini Picatinny rail, like you have, instead of having the screws that come down from the top and having two circular shear planes, you have a screw coming in from the side, so a big rectangular shear plane, which that means it's not going to shear.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
the there. And then instead of trying to, with the lugs that they traditionally have on, top mounted optics, top screw down optics, they'll have lugs, but you're kind of playing this whole tolerance game with your screw tolerances versus the lug tolerances and all that. This one, just like a Picatinny rail, you have, the big slot cut in the middle and a big square face on a big square face. It ain't going anywhere, and it isn't putting stress on the screw. So the return to zero with these things is incredible. Like you mount it, remount it. Yeah, I tell you, I zero twice a month. Most of the time after cleaning or whatever, I'm not making any adjustments. Maybe a click here or there, but like most of the time, nothing. Just a verification. Um,
Okay. So I got to ask you then for
yeah,
clarification. On a Picatinny rail, when you have the bar that goes through the slot,
yeah.
typically on the bottom where, like in this case, the slide, it comes in on a Picatinny rail and it clamps underneath.
Yes.
How is that thing? Is it just flush on the slide?
So if you're no, there's a, like, I'm not sure if you can see there, but it's just like a mini pick rail. Um,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. So there's a if you can I share my screen here?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me. I could run downstairs and grab a gun that has it, or I can just share the screen. Um, Let me do entire screen. Get here.
I'll go back here. Ooh, let me add to scene. There we go. Let me delete this one. Get that out of the way. There we go.
All right, so I clicked back over. All right, so if you're looking at my screen right now, you can see what that optic cut looks like.
Ooh, let me finish. We'll do that. Okay. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. So you still have four grooves where it's clamping in there.
Yeah, so well, those grooves those are actually just relief cuts. Like what it actually clamps off of is it's like an undercut.
Wow.
So just
Okay.
like the Picatinny rail, it's got a like an undercut and an angle, and I'm gonna zoom out a little bit here. It clamps in on that undercut,
Yep.
um, and then there's the bar in the middle. Um, the bar in the middle, you can see where the screw kind of comes in and across, and that. So undercut on either side. It's just it's a very shallow pick rail, and then your optic, kind of mounts right on top there.
Very impressive. Okay. Wow.
I have this optic cut on Shadows, on Tanfos, on Glocks, on 320s, on everything. It has been bomb proof. I'm hundreds of thousands of rounds through this platform with. I've never had an optic come off. I've never had screws fail. I've never had my dot die. I've never had any of these things. There we go. Okay.
Okay. That's very, very interesting. I don't think I've seen that. It's amazing to me too how much extra steel is on those slides to be able to cut in like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I always feel like they're going to hit something.
Yeah, and I guess that speaks to another aspect of this. As you could probably see, like the dot is really low. Like it's
Yeah.
very, very deep in the slide. And that allows, I feel like when the top of the slide is almost in your viewing window, your just alignment with pointing the gun naturally just happens very well. I don't like having a huge offset where my dot's up here and my gun's down here like on an open gun. It just feels
Right.
weird to me. I like, and I guess that probably comes from being an iron sighted shooter for, most of my life. It's the same place the irons would be, more or less.
It feels more natural to you. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
But now, going back to zeroing, that changes that dynamic, because when you're zeroing a dot, you got to talk about sight over bore.
Yep.
So your zero distance, depending on how, I know you like to zero different than I do.
Yep.
But it's going to change your trajectory per se. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily change your trajectory, but in relation to your line of sight, it does.
Yeah, a little bit. Let's. I just made you switch. Let me share again. I'll pull up my sheets here. Let me know
All
when
right.
it's there.
It's there.
Okay, so this is what I use as my spreadsheet for zeroing handguns, and the cartridge I'm shooting is 124 Blazer brass. If I'm shooting an optic, I'm at 0.9 right now for optic height over the center line of the bore. 124 grain. This is actual bullet velocity, and then all the other stuff on altitude, temperature, etc. That's relative to where I'm at right now. I like to be an inch high at 25 yards, which is essentially the equivalent of somewhere between a 50 to 80 yard zero ish, somewhere in there, depending on the gun, the ammo, etc. What we see here is, so this is the actual height of a so right now it ends up being a 65 yard zero, and that gives me my 1 inch high at 25 that I actually shoot at. If I change that and I go, hey, that like an optic, like the highest an optic would be is maybe 1.1. So as you can see, as I change that to 1.1, like nothing changes by more than a tenth of an inch, throughout that whole trajectory. So, in the perception of slide ride optics, like it's perceivably way higher, a quarter inch higher. Like, oh my God, that's the difference between absolute versus lower 1/3 co-witness on a rifle, which for me, that feels like a noticeable change. It's a quarter inch. It's huge. But in the actual trajectory, that makes little to no difference.
Right. And at the distances, again, that change is going to be pretty small.
Yes. In rifle, it's definitely much more pronounced. But in these handgun distances, it is not.
The only thing I will say is, when I was looking at trajectory of iron sights versus your typical red dot mounted sight on a pistol, you're looking at about 0.4 to 0.5 inches of sight over bore on an iron and as much as an inch on the red dot. And I noticed that it would change it for me. I noticed that it changed where for competition purposes, like I liked to have a 0 at 15 because I could shoot confidently out to 50 yards and know that I'm within 6/10 of an inch of point of aim
Yeah.
with my gun. So with irons, when I did it, I had to do it at 10 to get the same 50-yard feel
Yeah.
because of the lower sight over bore.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because as I put in these numbers and I go back and forth, so 0.5 is about where irons would be. And you can see like the shift now is actually more 3/10 at the place that I care about, and
Right.
that's it's 3/10 across the range that I really care about, so a little over a quarter inch. So yeah,
But
it definitely, that's a bigger jump going to irons to dot.
yeah, and then the other question you have to ask yourself is, are we splitting hairs with 3/10 of an inch? You
Yeah,
know,
yes, and I would
so
say probably.
right. I think a lot of people would say, yeah, you guys are definitely splitting hairs, but when we're talking more precision and we want to be as accurate as possible, that's when that matters. But for the general person, 3/10 of an inch, they're not going to be able to shoot that at 25 yards. 99% of people can't do that.
And
So,
we're also talking 3/10 of an inch on a system in which best case scenario is shooting 3-inch groups.
right.
Best case scenario, you're shooting 3 or a little under 3. So, but I think that understanding, just like Ben's motto, Ben Stoger's, of like, look at a tiny spot. Like, it's the same kind of thing. I like, if you look at a tiny spot, then your range that you're gonna be hitting is around that spot. And sure, you failed your objective, but you're still getting all alphas. I look the same way at this, of like, let me look at a tiny spot. Let me get really precise about my what I'm going to be doing. And then even with my variability, I'm still going to have an acceptable result.
100%. And that's the only reason I try to be as exact. It gives me the ammo and the gun more room for error in a real life situation, meaning competition. It just gives me more room for error. So I try
Yeah.
to just be as precise as possible.
And I guess the two other things to talk about here, where we're talking about like getting really precise, like a lot of people find that the 25 1 inch high at 25 that I like to do, and or in my 223 1 inch or an inch and a quarter high at 100. Why that? And there's two factors that we want to look at here. One is windage, and two is elevation. Talking windage first, I want to be able to set my windage as precisely as possible. And in order to do that, I want the most amount of range that I can have, and not be concerned about literally wind, or my ability to actually even shoot a group. So the farther out I can go, the better. For me, with a handgun, 25, most indoor ranges are only 25. Just makes sense. But I shy away from the 10 or the 15 or even the 18 or 20-yard zeros, because I want to be able to maximize the precision in my windage. And the farther out I go, the more magnified the data that the target is giving me back on, hey, do I need to go one more click to the right or not? I don't know. At 10 yards, that can just be like a little quarter-inch difference, whereas, you magnify that out, and, at 25 yards, that's like an inch and a half. Yeah, I definitely need to click over. And it's hard to, the other aspect of this is people are like, well, why can't you just see? Well, the quarter-inch difference is hard to see when your pattern is a 3-inch group or a 4-inch group. It's really, well, I guess at 10 yards, it's going to be a 2-inch group, but still, it's hard to see the pattern until you magnify it out. So I feel
Yeah.
like 25 yards is optimal for windage. When you get to the elevation settings, One of the things that I really liked or learned when shooting irons a lot was I liked when, because as much as when you're target focused, you like to say you don't see the hits, but you do, especially when it's in close. And I liked when the hits appeared right off the top edge of my front sight, where like I had that visual confirmation of the hit. I could see where it was. Um, and so if I'm going to err in either way, I'm going to err a little bit high. I want the bullets to hit just above where I'm shooting rather than just below and be hidden behind the slide, if you will. Shooting irons. This is just basically a carryover from irons. So
Okay.
I like to be a little bit high visually. I like to be a little bit high because of trajectory. So for example, here I got, the 65 yard zero. That translates to an inch high at 25. If I go to just 25, well, now at 65, I'm 3 inches low. And, past out to, basically I maybe have to start correcting a little bit at like 75, 80. Whereas if I do what I was doing before, I still I'm getting out to 95, 100 before I'm actually having to start correct. Does that really matter? Probably not, but it is just another added benefit on top of the visual reference that I like.
Where are you getting your BCs from?
Uh, so manufacturer's website, which is
Okay.
that accurate or not? I don't know. The BC is not going to, and the handgun realm is not going to make a world of difference
Agree.
as long as it's roughly close.
Agree. So that I'm assuming that 2 is a G1. It looks
Yeah,
like a G1 number.
yeah. I haven't deep dove BCs honestly either in rifle or handgun. I just grab the number that they give me and go from there.
Gotcha. Shoot, I was about to ask another question too. What was it? Oh, when are you writing your own formulas here, or are you using a different
So
ballistic?
yeah, so this is all formulas in here.
Okay.
And this was, I forget, I got, it's modified from some spreadsheet I downloaded from somewhere, and then I tweaked it to work for what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. And it seems to be pretty rooted in reality. Obviously the handgun stuff's a different thing, but in the rifle stuff where I start stretching out and like, all right, well, what's my hold at 400? And it's been pretty dead on as long as I feed it decent data as far as velocity, bullet weight, etc.
Can you scroll back? Wait, actually, no, leave it right there. So in this situation here, you've got your 223 trajectory up. You
Yep.
could somebody who is like you might be able to zero a rifle at 100 yards for 1.3 inches higher, 1.25 inch high.
Yep.
But someone who isn't as skilled, in this case, they could mimic your spreadsheet just by zeroing at 50 yards, which they probably have the ability to do.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with this is it is, I have it set at a 50-yard zero right here. And I play with these a fair amount to, I think at this point I was answering, I'd left some data here because I was answering some question for somebody in regards to this. But what this allows, at your theoretical 50-yard zero, you are within 3 inches of point of aim all the way out to 210 ish. So for PCSL, where I know that my max distance is 200, I put my dot on it and I rip no matter what the distance is, basically outside of 10 yards.
That right, that's what they call that point blank range.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just aim for center, you're going to hit it. You're fine.
yeah. And I think that a lot of people find that, hey, when I zero, I'm going to not zero to my zero. And it's like, yeah, that's the way I do things. Like I want it to be a little bit high because I don't, I want more, I want to hit higher than my point of aim at the distance where I maximize my windage correction. and that's I'm okay with that. And a lot of times, also to kind of show what this looks like, let me pull up some images here. So these are the little squares I was talking about, where
Yep.
either 25 with a handgun or 100 with a rifle, the square, the dot just fits perfectly in the square. It's like framed, like the edges of the dot kiss all the sides.
I
Um,
like that.
and so, I can take any old USPSA target. I got a ton of these squares, just slap them on and start shooting. And so when you talk about, being, so like looking at this group here, right? This square is 2.5 inches. So I'm aiming center square. My dot's right here. My group
Right.
center is about at the top, which is
Yep.
1.25 inches, which is exactly where I wanted to be for a 50-yard zero at 100 with my
Right.
ammo, my etc. So this is like literally a perfect zero for me.
There you go. Now,
So,
do you do much shooting with LPVOs or optic rifle sights where you're using a reticle and not a dot?
yeah, so whoops, I did do some experiment with that. This is different optics. So I shoot personally with a dot, and then when I very rarely use a magnifier in PCSL, but occasionally I'll break out a magnifier.
Okay.
Um, And so, but I do obviously throw on a 5x magnifier when I zero. One day I wanted to see, like, hey, what does it make a difference if I use a LVPO? Like, am I more precise at the 100-yard distance or not? So what this is a red dot plus a 3x magnifier, red dot plus a 5x magnifier, LVPO. I think this is another LVPO, just two different loads. And this one's another LVPO with another different, same load as this one. Anyway, the overall takeaway, and this is just one day of many days I've done this, is it doesn't really make a difference. Um, this with this load, the this is all within the variability of just shooting groups. So on one side you'd be like, oh, the 3x magnifier is the worst, but then you look at this and the 5x is the smallest, but then your LVPO, which I think that went up to like 6.5, is bigger, is in between the two. And don't read too much into it. This is one day of a couple half dozen I've done this kind of test with different ammo types. And the answer is it makes absolutely no difference. All the variability you're seeing here is the actual variability of the gun and the ammo, not the shooter's ability to see what's going on.
Yeah. I was just curious because I know when I shoot with a reticle and not a dot that I actually prefer to have diamonds because it's easier for me to align the
Yeah.
stadia lines with the points of the diamond, and I can know, like, I can literally precisely call my shot, and if the shot is way off from what I'm calling, then I know there's an issue either with the ammo or the gun, or you know what I mean. Like, it just makes it easier, I have found, for alignment. But I love the idea. I might switch to something like that because I don't need a bullseye target for doing this testing. It's just what I had laying around, so I've used them. But a 2-inch square, or I can actually determine, like, depending on which dot I'm using, they're either 5 or 6 MOA dot. I can create a square, like you're saying, that fits the dot,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can just put the dot in the square, and I'm like, okay, good to go.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And like you said, for different reticle options, it can make a difference. I got used to shooting
Sure.
those because I don't, and actually my LVPO has a dot in the middle too. And the dot is like
Mm.
a 1 MOA, so it fits well. This is the study I referenced earlier with the shooting 25 yards. This is your 25-yard group, and then this is the pass through to the 100-yard group.
Wow. Okay.
So
And if I can interrupt for just a second,
yeah,
this is what I was talking about, Luke. So like that 3.3-inch group, it looks massive Like you're like, oh, look how loose that group is. But then you're like, oh, it's only 3.3 inches.
Yeah.
That's what I was finding with, doing this pistol testing. It's like, oh, this, at 25 yards when I'm just looking down range and seeing the impacts on target, I'm like, damn, that looks loose. And then I get back and I actually measure it precisely. I'm like, wow, that's a much better group than what I was thinking.
Yes.
But that's why I put out a couple posts where I've been they look massive on that small target, but when you superimpose them on like a USPSA or an IPSC or an IDPA target, you're like, look how tiny the group is. So
Yeah.
realistically, they're small groups. They just look massive on that cardboard.
Yes. Yes.
Now there are some big groups out there though, like farther to the right. That one group is big.
Yes. And what there's a couple lessons taken away from this. You can really start to see, like let's look at these two right here in the middle, for example, like the vertical striation that I was talking about, where you look at this group and you're like, hey, these are round groups. And then you start getting vertically and you're like, hey, it starts stretching more and more vertically. And you can see that happen over here. This one's a little more vertical, and it gets even more vertical here, and even worse as we go. A lot of that is the velocity range variation. And then the second thing I would say is this is in the same gun, in the same condition, same shooter, same everything. And a lot of people seem to, just buy whatever's cheapest. Ammo really doesn't matter. It does.
It does. 100%.
It does, and now, it does a lot.
That doesn't mean that cheap ammo can't be good, but it's not going to be the rule.
Yes. Like right in the middle here, right here. This is the 5201. This is a Blazer Brass 124 grain. This is my primary match ammo and has been for a long time. It's just an incredible value for what you get. Your bang for your buck here. It's great.
Well, hold on. Don't scroll too much because I wanted to point out exactly what you're saying. Look at the 25-yard target. 2.3-inch group.
Yeah.
At 25 yards. That's excellent.
Yes. Yep. It is. It's great. So this is great. Great ammo. Great value. If you really need, and I don't think in this study I have our GM9, it doesn't look like, but like there's more accurate, flat point or, hollow point ammo out there if you really need it for certain applications. But for most people, this is going to do just fine through their handgun and USPSA distances.
100%. So what do you think is the reason that it seems like I've noticed that with hollow point, I don't have any on my schedule yet to shoot. Maybe I'll get to that next year, but I have noticed that it seems like hollow point seems to shoot a little bit more accurately. Do you think it's
absolutely, no doubt,
the shape is just more stable?
A lot of it has to do with inherently the base. So if you think about your bullet manufacturing, you have three primary ways of making a bullet with a jacket on them. Obviously your fourth is just a raw lead bullet. Then you have like a coated bullet with polymer on it. Then you have a plated bullet where it's a copper plating on it. Then you have a cup and what we call like a cup and core bullet, where you're drawing a cup out of a gilding metal, a copper or a brass, and then you're putting a lead core into that, and then forming it together. A cup and a core, a lead core. Cup and core jackets cup and core bullets are the most accurate as a whole, historically at least. And so most of your, what is called like an FMJ would be like a cup that what you're seeing when you pick up that round is the nose, which is the cup, but the base of the bullet is typically exposed, but that's inside, facing the propellant. So you don't really see that. Right. When with a hollow point, you're inverting that process, and so the hollow point's open to the front, so it's the same kind of cup, if you will.
It's like a reverse draw. Yeah,
it's just reversed. Like it's not even like it's drawn the same. It's just you put you form it opposite. It goes into the
Right.
forming die backwards, if you will. And so with that, what ends up happening is the base of the bullet, and I think if, you know the rifle world, the base of a bullet is really important.
Yes.
How square it is, how flat it is, how sharp or not sharp the corners are, boat tail, no boat tail, in the rifle stuff, etc.
Right.
And so with that, the base of the cup being on the bottom where the propellant's pushing and the base of the bullet, you can just get that way more consistent when it's all one piece. If you're going the other way, you basically have the jacket kind of curling over onto lead, and it's a kind of a multi-piece thing going on down there that's just not as consistent to push on.
So it's the equivalent of a boat tail hollow point rifle projectile.
Yeah, in a way, I almost,
I mean,
yeah.
it's because that's also pulled from the rear. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So in that case, that's what I mean.
Yes, a hollow point, right? Yes, in that sense, yeah. Or like OTM, like all the OTM stuff is the
Yeah,
same kind of concept. Where
exactly.
in the rifle world, it can be a little bit different because sometimes they'll with most of those boat tail bullets, like typically it's more of like a pill on the bottom versus like it's not as thin. Like they're almost taking a pill and drawing the jacket off of that. Um, but regardless, same concept.
Interesting. So that does explain it then. So that's what I was like, yeah, the shape's got to be the stabilizing factor. Okay. Pretty interesting.
Yeah. This one's another interesting one when we're talking about offsets. So this is a PCSL target, the PCSL, T zone up in the head. And what
Yep.
this is my point of aim, point of impact. So at 5 yards, 10 yards, and 25 yards, I'm aiming at the paster off of a bench rest. So this bottom one is 5 yards. So if I aim center in the T zone, I am barely in at 5 yards. Then
Okay.
here we got 10 yards, and here we got 25 yards. And this is with that same, one and a quarter high at 100, so a 50-yard zero. So, basically the lesson here for me is anything inside of 25 yards, I actually need to aim in the upper, kind of upper edge of the T zone right up in here to make sure that I'm getting T zone hits if I need T zone.
Right. Well, center T zone hits. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. That's going to give me the highest likelihood for me to get the T I want is to aim up
Bingo.
here, not to aim here.
Yeah, because it gives you the greatest amount of room for error.
Yes, exactly.
100%.
It's just kind of weird though, because sometimes, like my dot's like floating around like right here, and like I break a shot and I'm like, oh, it feels wrong, but actually
Right.
it's like a dead center hit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I get all that. I like that. But that is to me is, I don't think there's anything that builds confidence more than other than, you knowing your ability, but knowing your firearm that way, knowing exactly where you can aim and where it's going to hit on any given target is absolutely supreme confidence
Mm-hmm.
that you can do what you need to do in any setting, you know?
Yep.
And I'm actually surprised again how much I've learned about my guns just from benching them and shooting them, especially like I'll even say the recoil and the trigger, specifically the trigger. And I've been a little shocked with the recoil at times too, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. It's you learn a lot. I geek out over the skills of this sport too, but
Yes.
it's very beneficial to learn the equipment as well. So yeah, I was just kind of flipping through, seeing if there's anything particularly interesting with yeah. I mean, I guess this is a kind of interesting one, I think. Um, Anything particularly interesting? Handgun, you can see it's more or less the same story as far as how I do things. But interestingly enough here, so this is gold medal 147 grain. This is our, premium competition SKU that we do at Federal. Here is that load out of Tanfoglio Stockmaster, which for all my complaints about extraction with the Tanfos, their accuracy with that conical barrel is phenomenal. I don't know any gun better other than like custom built 2011s, like nothing better. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, Tanfo shoots this box ammo, exact same box conditions, everything the same, 2 inches. Shadow 2 that was made in Kansas City, 1.4 inches. Shadow 2 that was made in Hartford, 5 inches.
Ooh, that's what you're talking about.
This is a
Wow.
brand new gun.
Damn.
Yeah, and you'd be like, oh, maybe it needs a break-in. Yeah, I did that. It's whatever, somewhere
Right.
between 500 to 1,000 rounds. Like these things are just not good.
Wow. It's got to be that blue state syndrome. That's what it
It's
is.
not great, not great. And so yeah, it's just kind of frustrating. But yeah,
Wow. And those are those 2-inch squares.
yeah, 2.5 inch squares, the same 2.5 inch squares.
Oof.
It works well like I said, both at 25 for a handgun and 100 for a rifle with the magnification I got and the dot size and everything. Like those squares are just the perfect size for me.
Okay. I think I'm actually liking. I've had white targets. I've had orange. That's what. And when I say orange, that color right there,
Okay.
which is a little, I guess, a little bit of a brighter orange. And I've used black. And so far with red and green dots, man, I can see them so much easier on the black and line it up on the black. I'm like, I'm really liking black targets for dots.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm learning so many different things that I did not expect by just doing this. That I'm like, wow, I would have again like that. I would have never guessed that black would be so much better. But the contrast is whether it's red or green, the contrast is so good that it's like, oh, that is easy to put my dot exactly where I want it and line it up.
Interesting.
Let me. Oh, here we go. This is the one I was talking about where I was having to aim on the, as you're looking at it, I was having to aim at the right edge to get into the middle.
Yep.
And I could see the numbers at 25 yards. I couldn't read them, but I could see each one of them.
Yep.
And so I could put the dot right there. So I knew I was centered and I could call every shot good and then just look at the group. But when I was aiming, um, so like this one is one where the gun, I actually aimed in the middle and I could easily put my dot smack in the middle and call them all good. So I was
Okay.
very impressed, and I'm like, I think I might be switching to black from now on because I really like that look.
Interesting. Yeah, I've experimented with it and I didn't love it, but everybody's eyes are different. Some people like green
Yeah,
dots, some people like, and so yeah, I figured out the brown background with the white square with the red dot is just perfect for me.
and I do have I'm not colorblind, but I do have a color vision deficiency, so I like contrast. Like I love the Hunter's HD gold lenses.
Mm-hmm.
But they're the same. They're like Ray-Ban, which now I would use. As a matter of fact, hold on one second. Now, these are actually almost as old as you.
Yeah.
Might be older because these are my 1990 Marine Corps team competition shooting glasses right here that they issued me.
Those are exactly my age. I was born in 90.
There you go. So, but it also creates contrast for me. So they worked when you have a black iron sight, because we'd shoot iron sights out to 1,000, and you had a black bullseye surrounded by a white target. Well, you do the lollipop, you'd put the bullseye over top. And the contrast that those glasses and the Hunter's HD Gold create with my eyes is spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm switching to black targets for my testing from now on.
Yeah. So I figured before I stop sharing, I'd click over and share a little bit more of what I keep in this spreadsheet here. So
Okay.
this is my data log for all my accuracy and power factor, and this goes. I do both factory ammo here, so you can see anything with the asterisks in front. This is factory ammo, and then here's my reloads over here, my load development stuff. And so, just, date, status, what gun it's out of, bullet weight, and then my powder setting on my funnel. I have it like marked for like whatever, as I rotate that dial around, I know what the setting is. Powder charge weights, the sport pistol, 3.2 grains, the length, and then what did I get out of velocity and accuracy. And when looking at, I mentioned earlier is like one day's trial or like a couple groups, you can't necessarily draw too many conclusions from that. Like you can, but like, let's see if it's the same another day out of a different gun or a different situation or whatever. And then you can start to develop patterns. So this is all the stuff I've done in, every time I zero or chrono, I'm throwing my data in here. And you're able to then mine that out. And like here, I just have comparisons of, I'm actually going to go back to filter again here. Where is my status? Clear. I want factory and I want final config. These are all like other tests I did to see like, hey, at different crit angle effect, different, et cetera. But I want to omit those from the data that I want my pivot table right now. So now when I come to my pivot table here, I can see, all right, well, out of my factory loads, the Federal GM is really good. The American Eagle is really good. Averaging, so 12 groups, 2.4 inches with an average power factor 139. And then in my reloaded bullets, I can start looking at that too. So like, the precision delta versus your brass monkey versus your blue bullets, in the aggregate across a ton of different tests. What does it look like? Which bullet should I go with for reloading? What round should I go with for shooting? So that's how I do the same thing with my 223 stuff, all the different loads, and then it can summarize the data for me as far as what I'm seeing.
Okay. So when you're doing your ballistic charts with that, so I have called just this past week, I called a bullet manufacturer and asked them, because I could not find it anywhere on the interwebs, what their ballistic coefficient was. When I called them, they were like, we don't have that data. We don't know.
Yep.
What do you use in that situation?
So I don't necessarily need it over here for this stuff. Where I will need that is over here for just calculating my trajectory.
Correct.
If I, and this is just kind of me, like I know roughly what the bullet's going to look like. So for example, I don't know, let's look at that. Federal LE223 T3 ballistic coefficient. See what Google tells me. So G1 is 224 for this. And that looks
it's the caliber of the gun,
right?
The ammo.
That's pretty cool.
That is.
If I do a different product. So, and I guess the other thing is I know the SKU. So maybe if I get rid of that and I say, we'll say 62 grain bonded soft point ballistic coefficient. Let's see if it finds it off of that. Yep, it found it. So that's cool. Let's see what it says for our American Eagle. There you go, 0.307 for the 62 grain American Eagle. So, I mean, at least we as, Federal, the Kinetic Group, we put out all the ballistic coefficients on the website.
You sure you didn't want to sign up for alerts?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I X out of things so fast that, like, sometimes I will X out of it and be like, shit, I shouldn't X out of that. Like,
right.
I needed to deal with. But yeah, so I can't speak for other ammunition manufacturers, but for the TKG Group, which is, Federal, CCI Spear, Remington, and now Fiocchi as well.
Oh wow.
For the most part, I think we have our ballistic coefficients all on the websites.
Okay. It looks like I got all my questions that I had answered. I thought there was one more in particular. I can't. Yeah. Maybe it was something we already talked about.
All good. We jumped around a bunch.
Yeah, for sure. We've been all across the spectrum, but I mean, it's all good, all related. Mm-hmm. So I like it. It's been a fantastic conversation. I'm sure there's plenty of information that people can pull from this, regardless of where they are in the pickings of good to bad in ability. So was there anything that you wanted to mention before we hit the stop record button?
No, I think just to sum it up is that I want to see, like, I want to help shooters be able to do, like, having this conversation is to help educate shooters to do their best. And part of doing, there's some shooters who I see really geek out over gear and then just kind of neglect their dry fire, neglect the skills. And then I see the opposite, where there's a lot of guys who really, work the skills and they train hard and they put in that work, but they just kind of neglect their gear. And I would encourage the, both groups, because both of them, sometimes miss this aspect of it, to, employ some of the techniques that we've discussed today and assess their equipment and make, get it to a reasonable standard in which you have that confidence, like you said, that your equipment's good to go, and now it's just you who's got to deliver.
Now, if Faust.systems if someone goes to that, can they just contact you right through there?
Yep. I have, on there, there's a contact us at the bottom of each product page that has my email and my phone number.
Okay. Well, there you go. People can go there if they have any further questions for you.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. And I did think of the question that I was going to ask you, and it was from probably 20 to 30 minutes ago, but last year you shot PCSL Nationals.
Yes.
At Prairie Fire.
Yes.
Did you, with those longer, they were only 164 yard shot, I think it was. I lased them. Did you use a magnifier on that?
No.
Okay. I don't feel it's necessary. I feel like that's still pretty close.
Yeah. So the only time I find magnifiers are necessary on those is when you can't find the target.
Okay. So when they blend in with their background a little more.
Bingo. That's where sometimes with the closer shots, I'll actually bust out the magnifier. I want to say one of my earlier PCSL Nationals, I made it into the Super 6, and we were reshooting a stage that I had already shot, that had some longer shots at like 100, 120, whatever, in the Super 6. And I think it might have been my first year. It was either my first or my second year. I forget exactly which. But I had shot the stage in the match with a magnifier, and I had flipped the magnifier back and forth for the two positions. And then I'm watching the top guys shoot that I didn't shoot with any of them. I shot with my friends, you know, and I'm watching none of them use a magnifier. I'm like, oh, maybe I screwed up. And sure enough, I ran the stage without a magnifier and ran it, you know, like 6 or 8 seconds faster than I had in the match. And that was kind of the big, like, you know, slap in my face of like, hey, you can, you know, for PCSL for the most part, like be very hesitant to get out the magnifier. The time of messing with it and the time that it slows down your transitions is typically just not worth it. But that being said, I always have it in my bag, and I'm not afraid to use it if the situation dictates.
Okay. So it's a learning point. That's all.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Luke, I appreciate you coming on and having this conversation. I wasn't sure how long it was going to take, but it took right at 2 hours.
There we go.
So I'm sure we can have this again at some point down the road because this is a never ending cycle of learning. So,
For sure.
all right. Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend and the other testing you've got coming up.
Thank you.